The communication array crackled with static as Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire watched the tactical display with growing satisfaction. 17 star systems have fallen in the past month, their defenses crumbling like paper before the might of his vast armada. The purple-scaled commander's mandibles clicked in amusement as he observed the latest conquest. "Sir, we're receiving surrender transmissions from the Altarian colony ships," reported his communications officer, a young Zephyrian whose scales still bore the bright blue of youth. "Predictable," Kethvar rumbled, his voice carrying the authority of 3 decades of conquest. These softer species always break when faced with true military superiority. What are distress calls? The officer's antennae twitched nervously. "Still broadcasting on all frequencies, sir." They claim to have sent word to something called the Terran Defense Coalition requesting immediate assistance. A chorus of clicking laughter rippled through the bridge crew. Kethvar's own laugh was a deep, resonating sound that spoke of countless victories. Terrans? Never heard of them. Probably some backwater species with delusions of military grandeur. How long since their last transmission? 47 hours, sir. More than enough time for any competent military force to respond. Kethvar mused, his tactical mind already calculating. Their silence speaks volumes. Either these Terrans don't exist, or they're wise enough to avoid a futile confrontation with the Empire. The bridge's main viewer displayed the burning remains of 3 Altarian defense platforms, their twisted metal hulks drifting silently through space. The Altarian fleet, once considered formidable by local standards, had been reduced to scrap and vapor in less than 6 hours. Kethvar's force of 400 warships had swept through their defenses like a storm through wheat. "Admiral," called out the sensor operator, her voice carrying a note of professional excitement. "Long-range scanners are detecting massive energy signatures approaching from the outer system. Whatever it is, it's big." Kethvar's primary eyes focused on the tactical display, while his secondary eyes continued monitoring other readouts. "Specify big, Lieutenant." "Sir, the energy output is unusual. It doesn't match any known propulsion signatures in our database. The mass readings suggest something between a heavy cruiser and a dreadnought, but the energy patterns are completely foreign." The Admiral's scales rippled with anticipation. Perhaps these mysterious Terrans would provide some entertainment after all. "Time to intercept. At current velocity, approximately 14 hours, sir." "Excellent. Signal the fleet to maintain current positions around the Altarian colonies. If these Terrans want to fight, we'll give them one they won't forget." Kethvar's mandibles spread in what other species might recognize as a predatory grin. "Have intelligence compile everything we know about this Terran Defense Coalition." 20 minutes later, Intelligence Officer Zixmar approached the Admiral's command chair, her expression troubled. "Sir, we have a problem. Our databases contain virtually no information about these Terrans. A few scattered trade reports mention humans from a system called Sol, but nothing about military capabilities or territorial claims." "How is that possible?" Kethvar demanded. "Our intelligence network spans half the galaxy. The reports we do have described humans as relatively new to interstellar travel, sir. Most accounts suggest they're traders and explorers, not warriors. They apparently made first contact with the galactic community only 50 standard years ago." Kethvar's laugh was harsh. 50 years? We've been conquering systems since before these humans learned to build fire. What possible threat could such primitives pose?" "Sir," the sensor operator called out urgently, "the approaching vessel has just increased velocity. New time to intercept, 6 hours. 6 hours? Kethvar's scales shifted to a darker purple. "That's impossible. No known propulsion system can achieve that kind of acceleration without tearing apart the ship's superstructure." "Confirmed, sir. They're also broadcasting on multiple frequencies. The translation matrix is having difficulty with their language patterns." "Put it through." The bridge fell silent as an alien voice filled the air. The words were harsh, angular, spoken in short, clipped sentences that the universal translator struggled to process. Finally, a mechanical voice provided translation. Unknown Zephyrian fleet, this is Captain Sarah Chun of the Terran defense ship Indomitable. You have violated the sovereignty of our allies, the Altarian Republic, and committed acts of war against civilian populations. You will cease all hostile activities immediately and prepare to surrender your vessels for inspection. You have 1 hour to comply. The silence that followed was broken by nervous clicking from the junior officers. Kethvar's mandibles snapped shut with an audible crack. Did that primitive just demand our surrender? It appears so, sir, the communications officer replied, his voice barely above a whisper. One ship, Kethvar said slowly, his voice building in volume. One ship challenges 400 vessels of the Imperial fleet. His laughter started as a low rumble and built to a roar that echoed through the bridge. Zixmar, remind me why we maintain an intelligence division if they can't identify obvious insanity? Sir, perhaps we should consider the possibility that a single vessel from a species that learned to fly between stars only 50 years ago poses a threat to the Empire. Kethvar's scales had shifted to deep crimson, a sign of extreme agitation. Signal all ships. Battle formation Talon 7. When this Terran arrives, we'll demonstrate why the Zephyrian Empire has remained unconquered for 3 millennia. Yes, sir, the communications officer responded, though his antennae continued to twitch nervously. As the fleet moved into position, Kethvar studied the tactical display. 400 warships arranged in a 3-dimensional formation that had proven unbreedable in countless engagements. Each vessel was armed with particle beams capable of cracking planetary crusts, protected by shields that could withstand the explosion of small stars. The flagship alone carried enough firepower to reduce an entire moon to component atoms. Sir, the sensor operator called out, her voice tight with confusion. I'm reading multiple new contacts. The Terran vessel appears to have companions. Kethvar's primary eyes snapped to the display. Where moments before there had been one contact, now dozens of energy signatures blazed across the sensor grid. Explain. Unknown, sir. The signatures just appeared. No indication of FTL emergence. No energy buildup typical of ships dropping out of hyperspace. They're simply there. How many? Kethvar's voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper. The operator's hands flew across her controls, cross-referencing multiple sensor arrays. Sir, I count 143 distinct contacts, all showing the same unusual energy patterns as the first vessel. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Kethvar felt something he had never experienced in battle: uncertainty. His tactical mind, honed by decades of conquest, struggled to process the implications. 143 ships appearing from nowhere, using technology that defied known physics. Signal the Empire, he ordered finally. Request immediate reinforcement from the 3rd and 7th fleets. Sir, the nearest Imperial reinforcements are 8 days away at maximum burn. Kethvar's scales rippled through a spectrum of colors as he considered his options. Retreat was unthinkable. The Empire did not withdraw from inferior forces. But the situation had become decidedly more complex than anticipated. Sir, the communications officer announced, we're receiving another transmission from the Terran fleet. The same Captain Chun. Put it through. The harsh, alien voice filled the bridge once more. Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire. My name is Captain Sarah Chun, commanding officer of the Terran Expeditionary Force. You now face 144 ships of the Earth Defense Fleet. Your hour is up. Will you surrender, or do we need to discuss this matter further? Admiral Kethvar's mandibles clicked rapidly as he processed the Terran captain's words. Around him, the bridge crew maintained their positions, but he could sense their growing unease. The tactical display showed the impossible: 144 ships that had materialized from empty space, moving in formations that seemed to mock the laws of physics. Communications, open a channel, Kethvar commanded, his voice steady despite the churning uncertainty in his mind. Captain Chun, this is Admiral Kethvar. I am impressed by your dramatic entrance. However, you face the full might of the Zephyrian Empire. Perhaps we can reach an understanding without unnecessary bloodshed. The response came immediately, without the typical light-speed delay that should have existed across such distances. Admiral, there's nothing to understand. You attacked our allies. You destroyed civilian installations. You killed innocent beings. The only discussion we're having is whether you surrender now or surrender after we disable your fleet. Kethvar's scales shifted to deep orange, a color his species associated with dangerous confusion. Captain, your confidence is notable, but surely you must realize that your forces are outnumbered nearly 3-1. Even with superior technology, basic mathematics suggests math. The human's voice carried something that the universal translator struggled to convey. It might have been amusement. Admiral, let me share some human mathematics with you. We've been monitoring your campaign for 6 weeks. 17 systems conquered, 14 million civilian casualties, and not one of your victims given the chance to surrender. The bridge fell silent. How could these humans have such detailed intelligence on Imperial operations? Kethvar's mind raced through possibilities, each more disturbing than the last. Here's another number for you, Captain Chen continued. 0. That's how many Zephyrian ships will leave this system unless they surrender immediately. Would you like a demonstration of human mathematics in action? Before Kethvar could respond, his sensor operator's voice cut through the tension. Sir, detecting massive energy buildup from the Terran formation. All ships are powering what appears to be primary weapon systems. Shields up, Kethvar Barkid. All ships prepare for. The universe exploded into light. The first Terran volley struck with the force of colliding stars. But it wasn't the devastating blast that left Kethvar speechless. It was the precision. 18 Zephyrian ships found their main weapon arrays simply gone, vaporized with surgical accuracy that left the rest of each vessel completely intact. No holes breached, no casualties, just the complete elimination of offensive capability. Impossible, whispered the tactical officer, her voice barely audible. Sir, our ships are reporting that the Terrans somehow targeted only their weapon systems. The beams passed through our shields without activating them, struck only military hardware, and left everything else untouched. Kethvar stared at the tactical display in growing horror. In 3 decades of warfare, he had never witnessed such impossible precision. The technological gap wasn't merely significant, it was absolute. Captain Chun, he managed, his voice notably less authoritative than before. How, Admiral? Humans have been fighting wars for our entire recorded history. We've had to learn to be very good at it, very quickly. When we joined the galactic community, we brought those lessons with us. The human paused. We also brought our engineers. Would you like another demonstration? Sir, the communications officer interrupted urgently. I'm receiving priority transmissions from across the fleet. Ship commanders are requesting immediate orders. Kethvar's mind struggled to adapt to circumstances beyond his experience. The Empire's military doctrine had no provisions for facing technologically superior forces because such forces weren't supposed to exist. The Zephyrians had conquered their way to the top of the galactic food chain through superior firepower and tactical excellence, not diplomacy or technological innovation. Captain Chun, he said finally, what are your terms? Unconditional surrender of all vessels. Your crews will be processed as prisoners of war under the Galactic Convention. Ships will be impounded pending war crimes tribunals. You personally will face charges for ordering attacks on civilian populations. The Admiral's scales cycled through several colors as he weighed his options. Another demonstration of Terran firepower could result in catastrophic losses. His tactical training warred with his warrior's pride and his duty to the Empire. Sir, his intelligence officer approached quietly. I've been analyzing the Terran energy signatures. Their power output per vessel exceeds our most optimistic projections by several orders of magnitude. If their defensive capabilities match their offensive ones. What are you saying, Zixmar? I'm saying that retreat may not be an option, sir. If they can target our weapons with such precision, they can probably target our engines with equal accuracy. As if reading his thoughts, Captain Chen's voice filled the bridge once more. Admiral, my sensors indicate you're considering various tactical options. I should point out that we've already established target locks on the propulsion systems of every ship in your fleet. Please don't make this more difficult than necessary. Kethvar closed his primary eyes and consulted the tactical display through his secondary vision. The Terran ships had moved into what human military doctrine would later describe as a perfect envelopment formation. Every Imperial vessel was effectively surrounded by multiple Terran ships positioned at optimal firing angles. "How long have you been planning this?" he asked quietly. "The moment your forces crossed into Alterian space, Admiral. We've been tracking your fleet since you entered this sector. Did you really think you could conduct a campaign of conquest without anyone noticing?" The admission struck Kethvar like a physical blow. The Zephyrian Empire prided itself on military intelligence and strategic planning. The idea that these unknown humans had been observing and tracking Imperial forces while remaining completely undetected was professionally devastating. "Sir," the sensor operator called out, "I'm detecting additional energy signatures approaching from the system's edge. The patterns match the Terran vessels, but the scale is—" "What is it?" Kethvar demanded. "Sir, the new contact appears to be approximately 12 times the mass of their largest current vessel. Energy output is correspondingly massive." Captain Chen's voice returned, now carrying a note of finality. "Admiral, that would be the TDS Retribution, our heavy cruiser. Captain Martinez sends his compliments and asked me to inform you that a ship's main battery can crack a planet's crust in a single volley. We really would prefer to resolve this peacefully." Kethvar looked around his bridge at officers who had followed him through dozens of campaigns. Their scales had shifted to the pale yellow of fear, and their antennae drooped with defeat. For the first time in his career, he faced an enemy that wasn't just superior. They were playing an entirely different game. "Captain Chun," he said slowly, "I hereby surrender the 47th Imperial Fleet to Terran forces. We will comply with your instructions." The silence that followed stretched for long seconds before the human captain responded. "Admiral, we appreciate your wisdom. Please have all vessels shut down their weapon systems and prepare for boarding parties. Our Marines will be arriving shortly to escort your crews to processing facilities." As Kethvar gave the necessary orders, his mind wrestled with a terrible realization. If these humans possessed such overwhelming technological superiority, why had they remained hidden? Why allow the Empire to believe it was the dominant military force in the galaxy? The implications were staggering and deeply troubling. Admiral Vexthor of the Imperial Third Fleet had received Kethvar's distress signal 6 hours ago and immediately dispatched his fastest ships to investigate. What he found when his reinforcement fleet dropped out of hyperspace defied everything he understood about military tactics and galactic politics. "Report," he commanded from his flagship's bridge, his scales rippling with agitation as he studied the tactical display. "Sir, we're detecting approximately 800 Imperial vessels in the system, but they appear to be powered down. No shields, no weapons, minimal propulsion. They're arranged in what appears to be a prisoner formation." His sensor operator's voice carried the confusion that everyone felt. "And the attackers?" "Sir, we're detecting 144 vessels of unknown configuration maintaining perimeter positions around our fleet. Energy signatures are unlike anything in our database." The operator paused, her mandibles clicking nervously. "Sir, there's something else. A single massive vessel at the system's center. It's larger than anything in our fleet, including command carriers." Vexthor studied the display with growing unease. His reinforcement fleet consisted of 230 ships, including some of the Empire's most advanced dreadnoughts. Yet something about this situation felt fundamentally wrong. "Sir, incoming transmission. It's Admiral Kethvar. Put him through." Kethvar's image appeared on the main screen, and Vexthor immediately noticed his colleague's subdued demeanor. The proud warrior who had conquered 17 systems in a month looked like a defeated old male. "Vexthor, you need to listen very carefully," Kethvar said without preamble. Do not engage the Terran forces. Do not power weapons. Do not take any action that could be construed as hostile. These humans possess technology that makes our fleet obsolete. Kethvar, what are you saying? Your message spoke of surrender, but surely I am saying that we encountered a species that treats our most advanced warships like obsolete training vessels. Kethvar's voice carried a weight that Vex Thor had never heard before. I'm saying that everything we believed about the balance of galactic power was wrong. These humans have been watching us, studying us, preparing for exactly this moment. Before Vex Thor could respond, his communications officer announced an incoming transmission from the unknown vessels. Admiral Vex Thor of the Zephyrian Third Fleet. This is Admiral Sarah Harris of the Terran defense ship Retribution. You are trespassing in Alterian space and interfering with lawful prisoner processing operations. You will power down your vessels and prepare for inspection. Vex Thor's scales shifted to deep crimson. Communications, open a channel. When the connection was established, he drew himself to his full height. Admiral Harris, I am Vex Thor, commanding the 3rd Imperial Fleet. I demand the immediate release of Admiral Kethvar and his personnel. The response came without the slightest hesitation. Admiral Vex Thor, your demand is noted and denied. Admiral Kethvar and his forces are being held under the authority of the Galactic War Crimes Tribunal for attacks against civilian populations. You have 30 seconds to comply with shutdown orders, or we will disable your fleet. Admiral Harris, you face 230 ships of the Imperial Navy. Your confidence is admirable, but misplaced. Admiral, the human's voice remained perfectly calm. You face the TDS Retribution and her escorts. Our main guns are already locked onto your flagship. Please don't force us to demonstrate their capability. Vex Thor looked at his tactical officer, who was frantically analyzing the energy readings from the human ships. The younger Zephyrian's expression was increasingly troubled. Sir, the tactical officer said quietly, I'm reading energy outputs that exceed our theoretical maximums by factors I can't calculate. If these readings are accurate, they are, came Admiral Harris's voice over the still open channel. Admiral Vex Thor, I'm going to share something with you. Human military vessels are designed around the principle of absolute technological superiority. Every system, every weapon, every defensive measure is built to exceed the best that any potential enemy can field. Vex Thor felt his certainty wavering. Admiral Harris, even with superior technology, you are still outnumbered. Numbers become irrelevant when the technological gap is sufficiently large, Admiral. However, since you seem unconvinced, allow me to provide a demonstration. The space around Vex Thor's flagship suddenly blazed with light as the massive human vessel fired what appeared to be a single, precisely controlled energy beam. The beam struck an asteroid roughly the size of a small moon that had been drifting at the system's edge. The asteroid didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist, converted to its component atoms in a matter of seconds. The bridge fell silent except for the soft clicking of mandibles as the crew processed what they had witnessed. Admiral Harris's voice continued conversationally. That was approximately 1% power from a single forward array. The TDS Retribution mounts 48 such arrays, plus secondary systems that are individually more powerful than your flagship's main batteries. Vex Thor stared at the empty space where the asteroid had been. In 30 years of military service, he had never witnessed such casual demonstration of overwhelming force. The human had just vaporized a moon-sized object with what she claimed was a minimal weapons test. Ow, he whispered. Admiral, humans spent 50,000 years learning to kill each other efficiently. When we reached space, we brought those lessons with us. We also brought our engineers, our physicists, our tactical analysts, and our absolute determination never to lose a war due to technological inferiority. Kethvar's voice cut through the transmission. Vex Thor, stand down. That's an order from a superior officer. These humans aren't just more advanced than us. They're more advanced than anything in the galaxy. Fighting them would be suicide. Vex Thor looked around his bridge at officers who had followed him through dozens of successful campaigns. Their scales had shifted to the pale yellow of fear, and their confidence had been replaced by growing recognition of their complete helplessness. "Admiral Harris," he said finally, "I formally surrender the Third Imperial Fleet to your authority." "Wise decision, Admiral. Please have your vessels shut down all weapon systems and prepare for boarding. Your crew will be processed according to galactic conventions." As Vexthor gave the necessary orders, his communications officer received another priority transmission. "Sir, it's from Imperial Command. They're demanding an immediate status report." "Put them through." Emperor Zakthal's image filled the main screen, his ancient scales bearing the deep gold patterns that marked absolute authority within the Empire. "Admiral Vexthor, report your status immediately. We have lost contact with the 47th Fleet and require immediate." The Emperor's words died as he noticed the human Admiral Harris standing behind Vexthor. "Your Imperial Majesty," Admiral Harris said politely, "I am Admiral Sarah Harris of the Terran Defense Coalition. I believe we need to talk." Emperor Zakthal's scales rippled through several colors before settling on a deep purple that indicated dangerous confusion. "Who are you? What has happened to my fleets?" "Your Majesty, your fleets attacked our allies and committed war crimes against civilian populations. They are now prisoners of war. However, this conflict can end here if you're willing to discuss terms." The Emperor's mandibles snapped with anger. "Terms? You dare dictate terms to the Zephyrian Empire? I command 12,000 ships across 400 systems." Admiral Harris nodded respectfully. "Your Majesty, I'm sure you do. And I command the Terran Defense Coalition, which includes 473 worlds and a military force specifically designed to neutralize threats like the Zephyrian Empire. The question is, do you want this to be a short, educational conflict, or do you prefer the traditional galactic approach of prolonged, devastating warfare?" The Emperor stared at the human admiral for long moments, his ancient mind calculating possibilities and implications. Finally, he spoke. "What are your terms?" 3 months after the Battle of Altarian Space, Emperor Zakthal stood in his private chambers aboard the Imperial flagship, staring out at a sight that would have been impossible to imagine a year ago. Human vessels moved in formation with Zephyrian ships, their sleek designs a stark contrast to the ornate architecture of Imperial warships. But they were not conquerors overseeing defeated enemies. They were partners in the galaxy's first truly integrated defense fleet. The negotiations following Admiral Harris's ultimatum had taken 6 weeks and had fundamentally changed the balance of galactic power. The Terran Defense Coalition's terms had been surprisingly reasonable, considering their overwhelming technological advantage. They wanted an end to expansionist warfare, reparations for the attacked civilizations, and the establishment of a new galactic security framework that would prevent future conflicts. More surprisingly, they had offered technology transfers, trade agreements, and mutual defense pacts to any civilization willing to abandon conquest-based expansion in favor of cooperative development. A soft chime indicated an incoming communication. "Your Majesty," his aide announced, "Admiral Harris is requesting permission to come aboard." "Granted," Zakthal replied, adjusting his ceremonial robes. Over the past 3 months, he had developed a grudging respect for the human admiral. She was direct, efficient, and kept her word, qualities that were rarer in galactic politics than they should have been. Admiral Harris entered the chamber accompanied by a small security detail, their presence now familiar and oddly comforting. The Emperor had initially resented the human guards, but after learning about 7 assassination attempts by hardline Imperial factions, he had come to appreciate their effectiveness. "Your Majesty," Admiral Harris said, offering the human salute she had taught him. "I wanted to personally deliver the latest intelligence reports and discuss the upcoming integration exercises." Zakthal gestured toward the comfortable seating area where they had conducted most of their negotiations. "Admiral, please. I confess I'm still adjusting to the speed with which your people implement decisions. 3 months ago, we were enemies. Today, our fleets are conducting joint training operations. Your Majesty, humans have learned that prolonged conflicts benefit no one except arms dealers and gravediggers. When we decide to end a war, we prefer to end it completely. Harris settled in her chair and activated a holographic display. The integration is proceeding ahead of schedule. Your people are remarkably adaptable once they understand the strategic advantages of cooperation. The display showed fleet compositions from across the galaxy. Zephyrian vessels equipped with human shield generators, Alterian science ships fitted with Terran sensor arrays, and mixed crews learning to work together despite centuries of mutual suspicion. Admiral Kethvar's report was particularly interesting, Harris continued. His mixed squadron successfully interdicted 3 pirate fleets last week using combined tactics that neither of our species could have implemented independently. Zachthal's mandibles clicked with amusement. Kethvar was initially one of my most vocal opponents to this alliance. He considered cooperation with primitives to be beneath imperial dignity. Now he speaks of human tactical innovation with something approaching reverence. The Admiral learns quickly. His tactical instincts, combined with human technology and strategic doctrine, make him extremely effective. Harris paused, studying the Emperor with a direct gaze that had initially unnerved him. Your Majesty, there's something else we need to discuss. The hegemony? Zachthal asked, referring to the militant alliance that had formed in response to the Terran-Zephyrian partnership. Yes, our intelligence indicates they're planning a coordinated assault against the Terran colonies in the Outer Rim. 7 species, approximately 2,000 ships, all convinced that humans represent an existential threat to galactic order. Zachthal's scales shifted to deep blue, indicating serious concern. Admiral, I've tried to convince them that cooperation is preferable to conquest, but they see our alliance as betrayal of traditional galactic politics. They believe that if humans are not stopped now, they will eventually dominate all of known space. They're not entirely wrong, Harris admitted casually. Human civilization does tend to expand and adapt rapidly. However, we found that expansion through partnership and trade is more stable and profitable than expansion through conquest. The Emperor studied the human admiral, noting the complete absence of defensive posturing in her admission. Admiral, may I ask a frank question? Of course, Your Majesty. Could the Terran Defense Coalition conquer the galaxy if you chose to? Harris was quiet for several moments, her expression thoughtful. Your Majesty, humans learned a long time ago that the ability to do something and the wisdom of doing it are entirely different considerations. Could we conquer the galaxy? Probably. Should we? Absolutely not. Empires built on conquest inevitably collapse under their own weight. Partnerships built on mutual benefit tend to last longer and create more prosperity for everyone involved. Yet you maintain military forces that could clearly overwhelm any potential opposition. Your Majesty, humans have a saying, if you want peace, prepare for war. We maintain overwhelming military capability precisely so we don't have to use it. When potential enemies know that aggression will result in swift, decisive defeat, they tend to choose negotiation instead. Zachthal's ancient mind processed the implications. You use military superiority to enforce peace rather than conquest. Exactly. It's more efficient, less costly in both lives and resources, and it allows everyone to focus on advancement rather than warfare. Harris gestured toward the holographic display showing the joint fleet exercises. Your people, for instance, have made remarkable technological advances in the past 3 months simply because they can devote resources to research instead of military expansion. A new chime indicated an urgent communication. The Emperor's aide appeared on the display, his scales showing the orange patterns of extreme agitation. Your Majesty, long-range sensors are detecting the hegemony fleet. Over 2,000 ships approaching the Terran colonies from multiple vectors. Estimated time to engagement, 14 hours. Zachthal looked at Admiral Harris, expecting to see concern or urgency. Instead, the human appeared almost relaxed. Admiral, your colonies are about to face an overwhelming assault force. Surely, Your Majesty, Harris interrupted gently. Do you remember our first meeting? When you told me that the Empire commanded 12,000 warships. Yes. And I mentioned that your forces were facing the Terran Defense Coalition, which had been specifically designed to neutralize threats like the Zephyrian Empire. Zachthal's scales began shifting toward pale blue as understanding dawned. Yes, the hegemony consists of 7 species with a total combined military force approximately equivalent to the old Zephyrian Empire. Harris smiled, and for the first time, Zachthal saw the expression that had terrified his admirals. This should be educational for everyone involved. The Emperor stared at the human admiral as the full implications became clear. The Terran Defense Coalition hadn't revealed their true capabilities during the Zephyrian conflict. They had demonstrated just enough overwhelming force to end the war quickly, but the hegemony was about to discover that what they had witnessed was merely the beginning of human military capability. Admiral, Zachthal said slowly, how large is the Terran Defense Coalition's actual fleet? Harris's smile became distinctly predatory. Your Majesty, that's classified. But I can tell you that the forces currently deployed to defend our colonies represent what we consider an appropriate response to the threat level presented by the hegemony. As alarms began sounding throughout the Imperial fleet, signaling preparation for joint military operations, Emperor Zachthal realized that the galaxy was about to witness the true meaning of human military doctrine. The hegemony believed they were facing the same force that had defeated the Empire. They were about to discover that humans had been holding back. In the distance, through the viewport of his chambers, Zachthal could see the sleek forms of human vessels as they prepared for battle. For the first time since the alliance began, he was grateful to be on their side, rather than facing them as an enemy. The galaxy was about to learn why humans preferred to avoid prolonged conflicts.